I really like that Professor Ramzi Talib has put together a nice introduction to psychology of Ramadan, and I've copied it from this. And this is, in fact, from the ISIP group, which I'm going to be using today on today's program. And he starts off by saying that the whole year is Ramadan. Natural trees take several decades to grow, mature, and blossom. So does the tree of Ramadan. The seeds of Ramadan must be planted and nursed throughout the year. So we find out on today's program from our very special guest, Seyed Jamaluddin Miri, who will be talking to us about the psychology of Ramadan. And on today's program, I've just touched on what we might be talking about, Brother Sayed. But let's just recap from last week's program when we ended off with what you spoke about in terms of contemplation, remembrance, gratitude, and we spoke about the quality or the attribute of patience. And Assalamu alaikum and welcome, Brother Sayed.
Walaikum salam, sister. I hope you're fine, inshallah. Thank you so much for inviting me once more to this beautiful space. I want to thank you as an excellent host and the Salam Media for offering 1 hour of reflection when it comes to the psychology of Ramadan and all other excellent topics. And I want to thank all participants and listeners for being with us. It's an honor to be with all of you. Jazakallah khairan.
So when we talk about, can we recap very quickly on
Yes, of
last week's
course.
show? So we can, I just want to remind the listeners and viewers that this is episode 2. So we're continuing forward from last week's discussion and building on that into other aspects of the psychology of Ramadan.
So essentially, last week, I think that we had a very good conversation about, as you remember, we spoke about tafakkur, tadakkur, and tashakkur, the importance of being with Ramadan as a way to harvest the fruits of Ramadan, but not to overactivate ourselves either. You know, we tend to sometimes walk into the trap of productivity. That's something that I've been thinking about. And this is just first and foremost nasiha and guidance for myself because I'm part of modernity. Because modernity defines your well-being and your existence through the realm of productivity. If you look at our national health measurements, it's connected to gross domestic productivity, you know?
Uh-huh.
And I think that even as Muslims, we have perhaps subconsciously internalized these notions on modernity. And modernity is detached from verticality, which is a connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, connection to Tawheed, a connection to fitra and to a fitri lifestyle, which is holistic. So
Right.
productivity is something that we also sometimes bring with us in our ibadat, which is not bad because we need to be productive in a worshipping way. Is beautiful. At least you're productive from a vertical point of view, connection to Allah
Mhm.
subhanahu wa ta'ala. But at the
Mhm.
same time, productivity could be a catch-22. Because if we just want to, like, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this because this is Ramadan, so I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this. And even though everything is connected to ibadah, everything is connected to worshiping, everything is connected to things that are khair, that are beneficial, it could be that you burn out yourself, you know, and then it's suddenly like you're frozen, you know. But while
Mhm.
just being with Ramadan and accepting Ramadan, being with it, and also through that, productivity will come, but it will come naturally, organically, then you could actually be more mindful of your worshiping, of your ibadat, of your act of contemplations, etc.
Right.
We need to rechange the notions of productivity that has been stuck due to modernity, because this predicted productivity is only dunyavi productivity, is only
Mm.
connected to the dunyavi realm and not the ukhravi realm and the
Right.
hereafter realm. So that's
Right.
something that I thought about. That's why tafakkur is so important. Contemplation, to just contemplate,
Mm.
being with Ramadan, you know, being with all aspects of Ramadan. Allah subhanahu
Right.
wa ta'ala has chained all the shayateens, all the devils, right? During the holy month of Ramadan. What does that mean for us? You know, what does it
Mhm.
mean for our, ibadat? To be with the Quran, to be with the Sunnah, to be with the Seerah, to be with presence of engaging yourself and fasting from all aspects, not only refraining from food, but also refraining from all other aspect of things that we need to fast from, whether it's bad attitude, whether it's to be, acting with vices instead of virtues, etc. And then tadakkur is the remembrance, to remember the beauty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation and all the things that He bestowed upon us. And then tashakkur is, as you spoke about, gratitude, to be grateful and to honor the things we have, not to take it for granted. So this is something that I think we should remind ourselves, and I need to remind myself, because I'm also trapped in the catch-22 of productivity, by the way, because we feel
Right.
like that's how we need to define ourselves as good human beings, as good Muslims, etc. And of course, productivity is important. We should do our chores. We should do all the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us to do. But at the same time, just to be with it is also a perfect
Right.
way of internalizing it.
Right. So, in terms of productivity and in the context of this discussion, how would we then strike a balance? Because I think, in terms of healthy, mental and emotional states, one needs to be able to strike a balance. And here we are being trained in this holy month to reflect a little more, to introspect a little more, to be more contemplative, etc. So, we're going into the inner, and this builds on the discussion last week. So this was the inner that we working on and how that affects the outer. But now striking that balance, because you're saying, we need to be able to continue with our daily chores. We don't have the good fortune of sitting in, itikaf the whole month, which we'd love to do. But we can be in a state, a very conscientious state of mind, in getting the training during the month in order to be able to achieve that balance. So I think the mental and emotional state is very important here, because we're being tested with our physical abilities to do certain things and to be
Yeah,
able to function without food and water
yeah,
as such.
yeah. I mean, it's easier for some and more difficult for others. I mean, I need to be mindful of those who do not have access to food for iftar the way that I do, or perhaps others do. We need to be mindful of those who do more physical work than perhaps more academical work, as myself. So there is, different people have different, like for the person who's working physically, let's say a construction
Mhm,
worker, a
mhm.
builder who is like under the sun the whole day working, building houses, and then come back. That's an effort in itself. That's ibadah in itself, to be fasting and refraining from food and
Indeed.
water, and at the same time working so intense with something that is physical, right? So
Mm.
it depends, like we need to look at yourself. You need to really scan yourself, like, and do things according to your capability, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never puts a burden upon a person that he or she cannot, cope with or handle. This is something that we know. So be gentle towards yourself is also something that I would say as a counselor to all brothers and sisters.
Yes.
And at the same time, bringing that balance is to just notice the subtle changes. Because when we're in a state of fasting, as I mentioned and referred to last week, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah.
then it's easier to see the subtle changes. You see the microcosmos within the macrocosmos. Because usually, a lot
Correct.
of the scholars used to say that the body, our inner self, is the microcosmos of the outer realm, the world,
Hmm.
the world
Hmm.
beyond, which is the macrocosmos. So everything
Got
in
it.
universe exists in your body as well. So, the sun is in your body, the moon is in your body. You were referring to Professor Talib. He speaks about the moon, you said. So the inner
Hmm.
moon and the outer moon that we reflected upon, that's also
Hmm.
inside of your body, right? So
Hmm.
by macrocosmos connected to microcosmos connected to macrocosmos, we can see that everything in our internal system is represented in the external systems as well. And we get this connection. And this subtle changes is easier to notice when you're in a state of fasting,
Hmm.
because then
Hmm.
you can, like right now, I'm speaking with you, my mouth is very dry, and then my saliva comes. Suddenly, the saliva is like a river, and then maybe I can connect that to the river outside. Because without the river in the external world, then you won't be giving the fertile ground access to water and to nutrition, right? So
Hmm.
the saliva reminds us of nutrition of the external world and the river, and that it's important to pour water, but to be mindful of it. We're not going to do it until we're allowed to do, which is iftar, but at the same
Hmm.
time, we're more mindful of it. So we need,
Hmm.
that's the thing that fasting And perhaps one aspect of the psychology of Ramadan can remind us of the micro connection with macro, because human beings today in this very reductionistic world is detached from the macro. It's anthropocentric system we're living in. Anthropocentric, which means human-oriented society that we live in, where you are the center of the universe. During the medieval period in the West and Europe, in the Catholic realm, the Catholic Church said that the Earth is the center of the universe. And Galileo Galilei criticized the Pope back then and said, no, the Earth is not the center of the universe. And he spoke about the sun, right? Now, we as Muslims believe that Allah is the center, right? But the human is not the center. The earth is not the center. Allah is in the center. And of course, we are circulating around the sun, like all the planets, etc., right? And we are in our worship circulating and connecting ourselves with the moon and the lunar calendar. So there is a connection there. And that makes us part of the universe. And of course, we're centering ourselves in our ibadah towards Allah Azza wa Jal. So anthropocentrism, which is the human-centric approach of modernity, will detach him or herself from the external world and from the spiritual realm. What we need to do is to connect the micro and the macro again, because if not, then we're just looking at our body as a machine, nothing else. And we're in the center of the universe, so there is no connection between our heart and the external world, between our nafs and our external world, between our aql and the external world. And of course, modern psychology has denounced the ruh and the soul aspect of psychology and well-being. So that's something we need to revive as well as Muslims. So this connection is something that we can see through the fasting aspect, because when you're fasting, that you're getting new glasses and suddenly you can see things more clearer, because you're noticing things that you might take for granted, where you're suddenly always in a state of chewing on something, eating something. And in modernity, we're always chewing on something and eating something. Historically, human beings were often in a state of fasting. People didn't eat that much because people didn't have access to food the way that we have in this modern era. So this modern man, which I am part of being, is actually a modern man who's very detached, both from his microcosmos and the macrocosmos, right? And it's very anthropocentric. So fasting helps you to take away these layers.
Right.
You can see the subtle changes. Yeah.
Right. So after the break, we speak about what's come up quite often in our discussion today already, is the statement or the word mindfulness. And that mindfulness then takes us to my question on what is the only if any, other desired outcome of Ramadan. So let's talk about that after this break.
Inshallah. Looking forward to it.
Nothing less than a masterpiece. Droplets of gold inspires precious design. Platinum bursts with intricate freshness, and every pure diamond becomes more than just a girl's best friend. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, where timeless dreams become a reality. Come to us. We tailor-make designer gold, platinum, and diamond jewelry. Trade in or remodel your old gold. Clad yourself with classy name-branded watches. We offer insurance valuation and free zakat calculation. Visit us at 534 Ridge Road, Overport, or call 031 208 9142. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, manufacturers of fine gold and diamond jewelry.
Southern Africa Dawah Network is a non-profit organization striving to uplift the disadvantaged and empowering through education and dawah. Donate to the SADN centers, the MA Motala Islamic Center, as well as our Islamic centers in Amoti, Imtalumi, Botshabelo and Castile. Donate your zakat and millah today. Contact Farooq Sheikh 076 321 0650, Yusuf Mohammadi 072 259 3457, or the SADN head office 031 304 8000. Our account, Standard Bank, account number 050-856-294 for your zakat, or 050-879-790 for your lillah. Dawah through education, education through dawah, the Southern Africa Dawah Network.
Freedom Stationery supply Marlin and Marlin Kids pens to me and my school friends. They supply just about everything we need to help us get a better education. From books to files to rulers. In fact, any any accessory we need. Freedom Stationery. Education for the nation. What does accessory mean?
Share the love this Eid by donating to the Eid Dream campaign with Penny Appeal South Africa. Join us for the 5th consecutive year of providing joy and happy faces for Eid by gifting an Eid box to an orphaned or vulnerable child. For just 400 Rand, you can be the reason they smile. Donate today, www.pennyappeal.org.za, or contact 063 293 8737 for more information. Penny Appeal. Small change, big difference.
With so many investment options today, it's only natural that you might feel a little confused which route to take. Should I buy shares or should I invest in gold bullion? Randery Jewelers now brings you the Zahab coin, an alternative to the Kruger Rand. The Zahab coin, a solid wealth protector in its purest form of 24-karat gold, is the safest way to protect your wealth. So don't just sit there and watch your paper money depreciate. Change to gold. Call Randery Jewelers now at 031 202 4701 or visit www.rjcoin.co.za, situated at 151 Essenwood Road, Musgrave, Durban. Randery Jewelers, the family name you can trust. Salam Media, your spiritual companion this
The psychology of Ramadan is our discussion in the first part of our Ramadan edition of Mid Morning Talk on a Tuesday. We're speaking to Seyed Jamaluddin Miri, co-founder and director of International Students of Islamic Psychology. Before the break, I touched on the word mindfulness, and that I think is such a buzzword in the West as well. And now if one looks at the actual practice of mindfulness in the context of our discussion, and we look at what is the desired outcome of Ramadan, what would you say is the desired outcome, Brother Seyed?
I think that the outcome are plenty. Like we need to look
Yeah.
at from the individual level, and different people have different disposition. So there is not one template of this is the outcome.
Right.
But I understand your question, dear sister. It's a very excellent question. And first and foremost, allow us to speak about mindfulness a little bit, because we
Indeed.
tend to sometimes use the word mindfulness, and it's a good word in many faiths, mindful. We have our way of mindfulness to be mindful of Allah.
Paying attention. Yes.
Allah is Islamic mindfulness,
Oh,
being mindful of Allah or feeding Allah.
yes.
Mindfulness from a Western lens is very secularized spiritual notion. It's to be good, not to be with God. Not to be good is very important, but why are you good is because you want to be with God, because God loves things that are good. So, when Western secular notion of mindfulness is attached to the way that we reflect, then it's about being good. No, that's not a bad thing, by the way. I might say it's good to be good, right? But it's a G with a small g. We need to add the G with the capital G, which is God, right? And that's the Islamic notion of mindfulness. And we use the word tafakkur, which is contemplation, reflection. Reflect upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation. Be grounded in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation. Ground yourself. So one outcome that could be good for all of us, and this is just first and foremost a reminder for myself, because I'm not good at it all the time, is to be grounded and to have the outcome of everything that you're doing during the holy month of Ramadan, that it leads to being grounded, to be grounded in your ibadah, to be grounded in the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be grounded in noticing things surrounding you, which is all created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be grounded, right? That's one important outcome that we all could harvest from this holy month of Ramadan. And that to be grounded, we can use different tools, like for instance, tafakkur, contemplation, tadakkur, remembrance, and also muraqabah, which is introspection. And I would love to speak a little bit about some practices that our listeners could do that I think could be very beneficial during the holy month of Ramadan. But perhaps I can do it after your next question, inshallah.
And I just wanted to add to that, in terms of mindfulness and what you described for us as Muslims, we need to be aware of being in a constant state of mindfulness. And that would then bring us to the concept of taqwa, what are we protecting ourselves from? You know, we can define taqwa quickly so that we can understand that better, because this is what we're removing. Are we are we protecting ourselves from, you know, from the veils of the heart? Are we removing those
Yeah.
veils of the heart? And that, in fact, then would bring us to that which we're talking about in terms of a constant state of mindfulness. So it's not only in that contemplative state,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
also in our conscious state. And
Yeah.
that, I think, would assist in what we spoke about earlier in terms of balance and productivity.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. No, I agree. And I think that when we speak about contemplation, it's also to allow your body to contemplate. You know, one
Uh-huh.
of my teachers, he mentioned, he said that the aql is not only in the head, because modernity has connected the aql to the head, to the brain. Like the logical thinking, the mind, the cognitive faculty, aql, is in the head. But from an Islamic point of view, or from an Islamic psychological point of view, the aql is all over the place. We have the aql of our qalb, of our heart, our metaphysical heart.
Correct.
We have the aql of our jasad and jism, our body. We have the aql of our ruh, our soul. We have the aql of our nafs, our lower self, and our behavior inclinations. So the aql is integrated in a holistic way in all of our components that
Right.
constitute our psychological well-being. So by contemplation, when we speak about tafakkur and being mindful, is to be
Yeah.
mindful of all these entities. And in the last but not least, when you connect your contemplation with the ruh, which is your wasila towards connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you're, you know, in a state of taqwa, which is
Mm-hmm.
God fearing or God mindful, right? And that's something that is essential for all of us as Muslims. And sometimes it's easier said than done, of course. You know, we live in modernity. We're all, you know, consumed by modernity. We don't live in a fitri society, unfortunately. I mean, there are some fitri societies within the society, but for the urbanized human being, the urbanization doesn't connect you to fitri. You don't see the stars. Like here in where I live, if I just travel 20 minutes outside my city here in Sweden, then I actually see the stars in the sky. But in the city, I don't see them. That's just a
Sure.
sign that the urban man or woman is detached from creation,
Indeed.
from fitri environment. So one way for us to be in a state of tafakkur is to connect ourselves with creation, connect ourselves with all types of creation, nature. Because with
Absolutely.
nature, you'll be finding soothing in yourself, and that will help you in your tafakkur towards connecting yourself with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there are some practices I would like to remind ourselves to perhaps practice, and it could be a good way for us to work, and maybe some good guidance for all of our excellent listeners. Would you like me to
Certainly.
go with maybe one aspect of contemplation?
Not yet. I have a
Okay, I'll
question
wait for it.
from a viewer. I just want to put the question forward to you. How do we avoid the separation of these?
Entities.
Yes.
Wow, that's so difficult because you know it's like we can't live like. Of course, if you live as a zahir, you know, as an askit, you know, then of course you can just be like. But a Muslim is not only askit all the time. You know, we don't have like that notion in Islam which you can find in other religions where, you know, just detach yourself from dunya is a virtuous lifestyle. No, you need to be part of dunya. This is the beauty of Islam, that Islam is all about being in dunya, but at the same time, detach yourself from dunya. It's the balance, because it's ibadah to work. It's ibadah to socialize. It's ibadah to marry and have family and have children and raise children. All of our anbiya, or I should say majority of our anbiya, they were, you know, they had children, they were married. You know, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he had children, he was married, right? So we don't have that notion that you might find, let's say, in Catholic Christianity or in Buddhism, where you have monks that are detached, they're not allowed to marry, they're just, you know, in a state of one aspect of worshiping. This is not virtues behavior according to Islam. So that's why the beauty of Islam is the struggle to bring balance about, right? To bring balance about. So how can I bring balance between being detached and attached? You know, because by being attached is nothing wrong. You should love your work if it's a good work. You should love your
Absolutely.
family because your family is also your, you know, gate towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, we say that marriage is 50% of the religion. Why? Why is this something that our religion is telling us? It's because marriage in itself is jihad al-nafs. You need to compromise with your spouse. So it's ibadah in itself, right?
Right.
So it's about striking that balance, to be attached with creation as a way to come closer to Allah, because Allah has created all of this as a measurement for you to come closer to Him. But at the same, detach. Don't allow the creation, the things that are, mortal objects, to take over your life. Don't put your full love in that, or don't put your sustenance on that, because in the end, when everything is removed, Allah is still there. Allah is the ultimate point of worshiping for all Muslims, right? So it's about being attached and detached at the same time, and strike that balance. And I think that Ramadan, with fasting and other, ibadat that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided for us, then we're in a better state to strike that balance, right? Because even though we're working right now, we're still more mindful, because of fasting, refraining certain acts or attitudes or food or, water, etc. You see the subtle change. You don't take things for granted anymore. And then you can actually perhaps refine that tune of balance. It's kind of like when you play a guitar or a oud, the oud, if you don't tune it in a fine way, it will sound horrible, right? But if you tune it the right way, then it's in a balance, it sounds good. The same with the ney, for instance, or other. I'm giving instruments as a metaphor, as a allegory, right? The same with us. We need to fine-tune ourselves, and our way of fine-tuning could be fasting, right? As a way of fine-tuning ourselves, and also to be reminding ourselves that fasting is not only refraining from food and water, right? And Allah, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he has said that during Ramadan, the gates of heavens are opened and the gates of hell are closed, and the devils are chained up, right? What does this mean when the gates of heavens are open? The heavens is connected to our soul, our ruh, that connection. And through fasting, through different aspects of ibadah, you were alluding to patience and sabr, or gratefulness, thankfulness, and shukr. We could actually harvest the reaps of the heavens, that are being opened for us, through our connection and our connection with our soul, right? And we try to work with our nafs and break it down so that we can elevate ourselves and come closer to the heavens, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through these types of behaviors and actions that we should commit during the holy month of Ramadan. And hell, what does hell define? Fire. Now the gates of fire and hell are closed, right? So we don't need to be as consumed with the devil. We know that the devil always flows in our vein, in our blood. This is something the Prophet ﷺ has stated, in hadith. And during Ramadan, maybe not as much, right? Because the devils are chained, right? So the fire and the heat is not as strong. And one aspect of that is because our passions are more balanced, because through the food intake, I spoke about this last week, the shahawat is always more active. When we take that away, the shahawat, which is the desires, are more passive. So we can then look at the passions that are derived from us being consuming things all the time, like lust and desire, which is associated to the fire, the nafsani fire, and we can try to balance them out. Because we as Muslims, we're not against desires, but they need to be balanced. We're not against anger. Anger is the realm of fire. We are not against anger. We need anger. You should not be just like water, just stand up and not do anything. If an enemy comes and wants to rob your family, you should protect your family, right? It's about balancing the fire, right? Balancing the fire becomes a virtue, then it becomes a courageous person, shuja, courageous, right? So this is what we can fine-tune when the fasting, and also allude to the heavens are open and the doors of hell are closed. We be more mindful of our aspect of nafs, that it's nafs. It's not only shaitan that makes us go astray, it's also our nafs when it's not fine-tuned, when it's in the nafs al-amara, not in the state of nafs al-mutma'ina, the serene soul. Yeah.
I love that explanation. I just wanted to add to that in terms of Ramadan being, like we said, the training ground for what we need to achieve for the rest of the year. It should be carried forth for the rest of the year. Now, you gave examples. Of course, we know gates of heaven are open, gates of hell are closed, our shaitans are changed, but we are still in control of our nafs. So what is it that actually keeps us contained, in a sense, after Ramadan? what are we working towards? And I think when you speak about wanting to give examples of the practice to actually maintain that is very, very important. So maybe we should expand on that answer after the break, and then you can introduce those practices, because this is, I think, where, as human beings, if we need to exercise in order to keep healthy and fit, we also need to exercise the mind, the heart, and of course the soul. And we are currently doing that. We're strengthening ourselves through this practice. How do we enhance that? How do we maintain it? Let's talk
I
about that
agree.
after the break.
Excellent questions. Looking forward to speak about it with you.
Real impact this Ramadan. Donate your zakat to Ashraful Aid. Your zakat can help feed an orphan, support a widow, build a home for a refugee family, sponsor a HIF student, and much more. With Ashraful Aid, you can make a real difference. Visit our website at www.ashrafulaid.org to make a donation. Make your Ramadan meaningful with Ashraful Aid.
At Sentio, our Invest for Good philosophy is based on a genuine desire to use our investment skills for the benefit of broader society by investing responsibly, giving charitably, and developing talent that will transform the investment industry. Visit www.sentio-capital.com for more information about our Sharia investment products and start saving with us today. Sentio Capital. Invest for good. Sentio Capital Management is an authorized financial services provider.
Send food and send kindness to those who have lost their homes and have been plunged into poverty. For those who are a meal away from starvation, a food parcel means an entire family can eat this Ramadan. That's the power of food. Donate now to Islamic Relief.
These days, I'm more health conscious than ever. So tonight it's stir fry for dinner, cooked in healthy Helios pure sunflower cooking oil. Helios is pure sunflower goodness, packed with omega-6. That's good for your heart, and is approved as part of the Heart and Stroke Foundation eating plan. Dinner's ready! Helios, pure sunflower cooking oil. A healthy family is a happy one.
When someone is down in the world, surviving on the smallest means possible, an ounce of help is better than a pound of preaching. Strong people don't put others down. They lift them up. We cannot do all the good the world needs now. The world just needs all the good that you can muster. Your compassion could break 100 chains of poverty. Spend for Allah Ta'ala's sake. Have hope in His reward. Support the Al-Fida Foundation in our every effort to lift people towards success and financial independence. Visit our website at www.alfida.co.za or give us a call at 041 484 1288.
Salam Media, your spiritual companion this Ramadan.
How does one nurture one's heart, soul, and mind and keep it as fit as possible, so to speak? Brother Seyed, Jamaluddin, Miri, are you with us? Yes?
Yes, I am here. Yes. Yeah, that's
Okay,
a great
good.
question. And that's not an easy question to answer. But I think all of our religious duties, devotions, and practices are great tools of sustaining and balancing all these components that you were referring to, right? So for instance, fasting, to fast not only with one domain, but all domains. To fast and to understand that you can fast with, for instance, if you look at the Hadith Jibreel, that defines our religion, right? Islam, Iman, and Ihsan, you could fast and connect it to all of these. Like Islam is, our bodies, doing the different ibadat, Iman is our faith, connection. And also Ihsan is with excellency and beauty and beautification. And to fast in that way and understanding, like, yeah, okay, with Islam is, I'm using all the components of my body, and with Iman, I'm using the component of my soul and my metaphysical heart as well, and also to elevate the nafs, right? And with Ihsan is to look and see the subtle things that are so beautiful, both in our microcosmos and in the macrocosmos, right? All these aspects are good ways of connecting yourself with all these components that you were alluding to, dear sister Najma. Also to understand and reflect upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the sustainer, right? And through his divine names and attributes, he is the benefactor, right? Mu'min. He is
Absolutely.
the muhyi. He's the life-giving, he is the razaq. He's the provider. And that's something that we can reflect upon even after Ramadan, because that's something that he always provides for us, through his names, his divine names and attributes. So please forgive me. Utilizing the divine names, internalizing the divine names, contemplating about the divine names are a very good way of keeping the psychology of Ramadan, the psychological intake of Ramadan live and well throughout all months. And as we spoke about last year, the Sahaba, they prepared for Ramadan the whole year, 6 months in advance. They were asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for another Ramadan. 6 months after Ramadan, they were praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he could accept all the worship throughout the holy month of Ramadan. So we should also be in that state. That Ramadan is something that we will always be in that state. Even though it's a month, we keep it within ourselves all the time.
Right.
All the time. So it's not only 1 month and then we go back to our previous lifestyles. We try to integrate all the insights that we have gained throughout the month into our daily life, even after the holy month of Ramadan, inshallah.
What an amazing month it is. I just have to say that, it's so much easier. It's so much easier to actually do all of that in this 1 month. And we know the reasons why. We've spoken about it, and we all know, as Muslims, we know why. So I think that nurturing again, it comes back to that. And also just what of our human characteristics, because that is in fact that microcosm that you talk about, and what is the training ground, as it were, because then we are more conscientious, we are more again mindful, and conscientiously aware, but so spiritually. And this comes from our roots, it's from the bottom up. We live from the top down, because we live a very physical, cognitive life. So what would those practices be then, Brother Seyed?
I mean, I would like to just refer to something that I actually work with my clients, which I think is a very good modality to utilize. Imam Ghazali spoke about 6 M's, 6 M's as a way to work with behavior change. And we can also speak about holistic change. Change in the sense that you go from perhaps working to refine your aspiration as a Muslim to come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So taking away vices and adding virtues could be one aspect of this change. And it's not only a behavior change, it could be a cognitive change, it could be like emotional change, etc. Please forgive me, I have pollen allergy, and right now it's a lot of pollen in Sweden, so my eyes are dry. So just allow me to sneeze once. All right, thank you. So the thing is that Imam Ghazali, as a way to help us to make different changes in life that will elevate ourselves in our spiritual path towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and bring us into another spiritual station in maqam, he gave us 6 M's that he recommended us to implement as a way to add the virtues that we want in our character traits, or do the behavior changes that will allow us to come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and what pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the 6 M's, and we can use this, right? So first and foremost, the first M is musharata, shart, which is goal, goal setting. What do I want to do? What do I want to achieve? Like, let's say during the holy month of Ramadan, what do I want to achieve? What is the actions that I want to, bring about? What is the non-actions that I want to not bring about, etc. That is the first M, right? That is musharata. Then you have muraqaba. Muraqaba. This is something my teachers have taught me. So muraqaba is to introspect, be in a state of introspection. So contemplation, tafakkur, is to contemplate, which is both introspection and extrospection. And contemplation in Islamic tradition is to contemplate about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's signs and ayat, both through the Holy Quran, but also in the nature and the macrocosmos and in the microcosmos as well. Introspection is to go within yourself, to list, for instance, what aspect leads me to connect with my musharata, with the shart, with the goal setting. What aspect within myself makes me go astray? Notice that. That is the second M, muraqaba, introspection. The third M is muhasaba, which means, hisab means accountability, right? So this is kind of like being accountable, to evaluate yourself, to reflect and evaluate yourself. For instance, how many times have I, stopped and contemplated if I am actually reaching my shart through the muraqabah that I'm doing? How often am I doing that? How often am I stopping and just being in the presence to notice if I'm on my way to reach the shart, the musharata that I'm setting for myself in the holy month of Ramadan? And when will I do that as well? That is muhasaba. And then it's mu'aqaba, which is the fourth M. And the fourth M and third M is quite similar. Mu'aqaba is the consequences. Or sorry, the fourth M and fifth M is similar. So we will soon go to the fifth M. But the fourth M is mu'aqaba. Mu'aqaba means to give consequence, right? So if I'm not achieving my goal or I'm not reaching the goal and I'm actually doing activities that I'm noticing from my muraqaba and in the muhasaba that is making me go astray, which consequences should I give to myself? That is mu'aqaba. Which it could be like, for instance, I'm not allowed to do this and that for 24 hours, whatever you find suitable as consequences for yourself and for your nafs in particular to be able to elevate it. And then the fifth M is mu'ataba, which is kind of like consequences, but it's perhaps the outcome of the consequences, the tools of the consequences, which is to be reprimanding yourself, right? So what will you do that you achieve the goal? And what would you say to yourself, or which actions do you put upon yourself if you don't achieve the shart, the goal that you have set for yourself? And the final M is mujahada. And mujahada is connected to jihad, and jihad al-nafs, which is to fight your lower self, your nafs al-lawama bil-su, the nafs that is inclined to evil. So mujahada is, what shall you do in order to fulfill the goal? Which jihad of the nafs do you need to do? Or the jihad of your ihsas, or the jihad of your nafs, behavior inclinations, or the jihad of your aqlani inclinations, your cognitions, etc. So these 6 M's you can utilize on a daily basis, and interconnect them in order to achieve a certain goal that you want to achieve, whether it's a behavior goal, it's a cognitive goal, but at the same time, the goal probably for all of us Muslims is to come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to add those virtues and to remove those vices, for instance. So this is just nasiha and guidance from Imam Ghazali that a lot of my teachers have refined and actually gave the opportunity for us to implement in our clinical practice as well with our clients. That's the way you're working with behavior differentiation, etc.
Right. Excellent. So I think what you're saying then is one needs to be certain of one's goal, firstly. That's the first step. Now, the application of the other 5, how successful have you been in your practice? Because you've explained it so well and it's easily applicable. Have you been able to see the successful run of this application, as it were?
Shall I be honest with you, sister? It's very difficult. It's
a lot of work. Yes. And hence that exercise I was talking about, the analogy of moving those muscles. So again, it comes back to the practice that you were talking about. So let's exercise that soul, that akal, that intellect, and the ruh, of course.
Yeah. I think that don't give up. I don't believe that change is something straightforward. It's not like that. Of course, we believe in sirat al-mustaqim, the straight path towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it's not always straight for all of us. For some it's like this, zigzag. For some it's like this, bouncing up and down, but for every time you go down, you go even up, higher up. It's kind of like, a trampoline, right? You're going up and down. This is life. Some people's paths are like this, until we reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So have the goal to reach to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to do the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with you. But be mindful that this is not a easy task. It's not like a straight line. It could go up and down, and don't give up. Have sabr, have patience, but don't give up. Don't give up, because it's not, sometimes you read these manuals like 10 steps to achieve success in life. All these, modern manuals you see in these modern well-being manuscripts. I don't agree with that. Of course, there are 10 steps. We have our steps in Islam, 6 M's, for instance, or we have the 3 T's I spoke about yesterday, tafakkur, tadakkur, and tashakkur. And this is amazing, but it's not like, 10 steps and then you're done, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can always elevate you and always put you down again. This is the way people in the highest maqam, they were always most fearful. All these, great, scholars of us who were on high maqam, spiritual station, they were always fearful because they knew that Allah could just shut it down the next day. You never know, And the person who is in the lowest maqam could perhaps be elevated by Allah just tomorrow, like suddenly like that. It's Allah who decides, right? So be patient with yourself. I often say 2 steps back and 3 steps forward is also good, because you're still coming forward. So with any trial in life, and if you make mistakes, don't lose your hope. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves those who repent and those who do tawbah. So we can always do tawbah. I always tell myself and all my clients and all my colleagues and all my brothers and sisters, the tool of tawbah is a beautiful tool. Now, we shouldn't take it for granted. We shouldn't just make the mistake purposely and then say, okay, I can do tawbah. No. You should do your best to not make it, right? But if you slip, because we're humans are filled with errors, right? Then you can always have some spiritual tools in your toolbox. One could be tawbah, repentance, right? So don't lose hope, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most forgiving, the most compassionate. We know that, right? And continue your journey. Continue your spiritual wayfaring. Continue that. Continue the suluk. Because if you want to be a salik, that is a person who is a part of the spiritual wayfaring towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will come, you will do mistakes. There will be shortcomings. There will be traps. There will be places where you slip. This is life. This is dunya. Dunya is not Jannah, right? So we need to always have the spiritual toolbox in place. The 6 M's could be part of your spiritual toolbox. The 3 T's could be part of your spiritual toolbox, right? And tawbah, we could add even the 40 tawbah. It's a T there as well, right? So the 40, right? Tashakkur and then tawbah, right? So that's a good way for you to feel secure. That is your, seat belt, right? And that's your parachute, so you can always have a soft landing when you fall down. That's your parachute. And then you try again and climb up the mountain again. That is life. Don't give up. Don't think, because modernity speaks about success story. Look, this man became a millionaire, success story. This woman is now the best person in this trajectory in life. Success story, the Hollywood story, the Bollywood story, the Nollywood story. We don't only have Hollywood, we have Bollywood, and we have Nollywood in Nigeria, right? So the Hollywood, Bollywood, the Nollywood story of success. Life is not like that. A lot of our scholars went through so many. Abu Hanifa was in prison. Rahimullah. Look at the Prophet, the seed of the Prophet, he went through trials and tribulation, but he always had faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No, of course. The Prophet he is insan al-kamil. He's the perfected person, So we're not prophets, we're not anbiya, but we can learn from the Prophet by internalizing and learning from all the things he went through his life. So I always tell myself, even after Ramadan, keep the seerah in place. Be close to the seerah, be close with the Quran, be close with the Sunnah. This is very important, right? A reminder for myself first and foremost, right? Because that is our tool, that is our gate towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. By going the path of the Prophet through the seerah, through the Sunnah, right? Read the Shama'il to understand the character traits and the behavior patterns of our beloved sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These are great tools for us to remind ourselves, and don't lose hope. It goes back and forward. It's not, and we don't agree with the Hollywood stories, because it's fantasy, it's fiction, it's not reality. Reality is complex. Reality is multiplex, and Islam is the balanced aspect of reality, to balance it out with the goal of Tawheed and connecting yourself with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Right. So it's what you're saying then, that it is the awareness that's really important. And
Yes.
awareness of oneself, which then leads.
Hello?
I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I just lost you. I hear you now. Yeah, please go
All
ahead.
right. And to conclude, one speaks of humility as one of the qualities.
Of course.
Humility increases a believer's self-confidence, which motivates him to raise to all that is good without putting others down. Now, if that is our ultimate goal, starting with the goal, then we're just going to end on that note. And I can see you just want to add to that. And we're going to hold on to that
We'll do
energy
it
so
next
that
week,
we can,
inshallah.
for next week, inshallah. And I also want to say that when you spoke about Tawbah and you spoke about repentance and you spoke about not losing hope, then we know that these 10 days of Ramadan is that of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy, inshallah. So let's make the best of that. May Allah accept it from us, inshallah. And this time with you is always so valuable. I really appreciate it. I've learned so much from you.
Me too.
And
I learned from you as well.
inshallah, we will continue next week with
Inshallah.
episode 3 on the psychology of Ramadan with our very special guest, Seyed Jamaluddin Miri, who is the co-founder and director of International Students of Islamic Psychology.
Jazakallah khairan, sister. Honored to be with you. Thank you to all the listeners, and thank you to the Salam Media staff. See you next week, inshallah. Barakallah feek.
Inshallah. Ameen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right. When we come back, we speak to Abu Bakr Karolia. We continue our journey with him on the history and teachings of Jalaluddin Rumi.